everybody. Anthem, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your time with us. And viewers, thank you for checking in again and giving a chance to participate in by listening and watching of my connection with Anthem. And thank you for wanting to see and learn who he is and what drives him. And please feel free to connect with him. I'll post the links to what he's working on, to his social media hashtag. And please find a way to carry something for yourself from this interview, something that you can be inspired, because Anthem, you're a bright light, you always smile. I appreciate what you've been doing so consistently. When I went on LinkedIn and did the research, I saw that you have been concentrating on the same goal all this time. And through involvement, all the projects and all the things you've done and what you've learned and who have you been, it's that one constant. And that one constant that I see, that a work and a mission that you're driving, is democratizing the money, the changing the meaning of the money to people, and making sure that the world where we live in has opportunity to have a new type of money, while still learning a lot from traditional foundation. I love your integration of innovation into what money is. And I really believe that you're one of the leaders in what I believe will be the future of money. And I'm personally reading right now the book called Sacred Economics. And, you know, you just constantly come into my mind, and a lot of things you have said in the past are coming in, and I say, yes, you know, thank you, Anthem. So without further ado, thank you so much for being here. I would like to ask you, why changing such a big system? Because you are one of the fortunate people who could benefit from not having it changed.
Well, humbled. Thank you, Arena, for having me on. It's humbling. I'm speechless. It's such a magnanimous introduction, and I'm grateful for it. So thank you, and humbled to be here and communicate with you and receive your communications. And I think it's just a curiosity and a passion and a purpose that drives me to stay curious and to stay in love. And love wins always, sunshine cures all. And I look at it like the more love we can have, the more enjoyment we can have. And I think that's what drives me in life, and is enjoyment. And others' enjoyment ultimately drives one's own enjoyment. It's kind of one of the, I think, the grandest paradoxes of life. And I think that we have an opportunity, is ultimately commerce, exchanging of goods and services, is really the apex, or has been the apex really of our society. And I think it will continue. I think we've been disappointed the last decade or so. There's a number of different metrics that can be pointed to, like Moore's law ending about 10, 12 years ago, and semiconductor processing speeds, in other words, no longer double every 4 years at the same price as Moore's law had always conveyed. You know, interest rates around the world being zero and negative, and more so, without things like a debt jubilee or hyperinflation like we'd always seen about, you know, once or twice or three times or so, you know, or more every century on average per country's currency. And why are all these things happening? You know, Bitcoin, of course, getting invented 11 years ago, right? Like, why are all these things happening? And the reason, I think, is that our systems of markets, we as people, our expectations and our of enjoyment, we eclipsed them about 12 years ago. And we basically have been suffering for about 10, 12 years in markets that woefully are inadequate relative to our wants and needs, quote unquote, of services and goods. And we need distributed marketplaces now. The centralized marketplaces, where governments are all central marketplaces, they're really forced marketplaces, because we're forced to adhere by all the rules. And whether we like it or not, wherever you're physically present, you have to physically abide by those rules, even if you're not technically a quote unquote citizen or a quote unquote resident. Whereas Bitcoin, Ethereum, these other public protocols hold the promise of being voluntary marketplaces, where all the rules are 100% adhered to because they're all math-based, as opposed to linguistics-based that forced marketplace are. And instead of humans being the judges, like we have with governments and centralized forced marketplaces, we have machines that people still voluntarily choose to have applications run on. When the applications do run, they're all mathematically perfect. And so it creates a perfect trusted record. And that's what Bitcoin gave us. For the first time in humanity, we created a tool to give us a trusted record. And I mean, now we basically can eclipse all of these wars and lying, cheating, stealing, killing, prisoner's dilemma game theory that had driven commerce. Means why Sun Tzu is still relevant in terms of tactics for business today, because business is a forced marketplace, kill or be killed, because there's fear of the unknown, fear from lack of trusted record keeping, because no one can 100% know if the records are pure or not, or if they've been changed by somebody else. It's impossible to ever 100% know. But Bitcoin made it possible to 100% know, and now we're experiencing hundreds or thousands or more now, maybe millions soon, of these different public protocols that are voluntary experiments that will give us the ability to voluntarily transact, but in an infinitely more powerful way, because the trust is infinitely more.
Yeah. Well, in code we trust, right? It's interesting. I think that the most key that is so beautiful of what our reality is and what our future, and I love that it's now a reality, right? That the trust, when people think trust, they think, well, I want to be able to trust. It's not what we're talking about. It's to where you don't have to trust. And when it comes to money, when it comes to capital markets, all the intermediaries that have been built, they've been built on the old systems, because we did not have this technology that allowed us to eliminate the trust. So we had to build all this licensing and all these intermediaries to make sure that cheater gets caught, right? And now it's not necessary. And I love that also it is so transparent, right? So we can write in a governance into a money, and if it's properly decentralized network, it stays the truth. It's immutable. I love the beauty of immutable information. I would love to talk to you a little bit of a history. I've been really spending a lot of time, and I know you enjoy the history. So I've been spending a lot of time kind of looking at civilizations, old civilizations, and understanding, will this building be standing here, and things that are left in my house would be standing here 30,000 years from now, and realization that all of the structures that we think are so permanent, they all get destroyed. It's just the nature eats it. It's all gone, right? And also then I've realized too that all the information through history have been so consistently manipulated and changed that we cannot trust to basically anything that we are told the history is. There are some markers that are, and the technology now allows us to be able to now have a real history, to create the future where we can look at the past and say, you know what, that's who we are. And going back to the history, what drives you? Why are you looking at at all the ways that things have been done? And I know that you really kind of like to see, okay, how was it done? Did it succeed? Did it not succeed? In also relation of new strategies.
Yeah, I'm intrigued because I think we have the ability to become peaceful as people in our main primary motive of communicating with each other. Whereas I think violence has been the underlying, no pun intended, motive, because we had to always protect ourselves and our gang, our clan, our family, our loved ones. We had to collude with them because we had to prevent other people from colluding against us. And I see it as now a necessity. You know, selfishly, I think if we continue lying, cheating, stealing, and killing, with war being the ultimate tactic and strategy ultimately of you know, kill or be killed, that we have now circumvented the globe physically, virtually. It's so easy for us to see anywhere on the planet now. We've become bored, you know, of lying, cheating, stealing, killing. However, our commerce and our trade all still is based on lying, cheating, stealing, killing. So, but we have this tool that was invented with Bitcoin that enables us to have trusted communication. It's just a matter of commerce needs stability. And as we all know, nothing about Bitcoin is stable, but except for the record that it keeps. But that's all that needs to be stable. And that's actually the most important part, I would argue, about it. And
I agree with that. Yeah.
which is humbled and basically to be able to now use that chassis foundation of ultimate trust, of distributed trust, and that's what makes it trusted, Bitcoin. And now you have, you know, things like Ethereum where you have distributed processing, and like in our Hercules stack, which is a distributed stack, a distributed software stack, we use Factom as an aggregate protocol layer to tap into Bitcoin to help buffer all the cost volatility of anchoring data into Bitcoin in a permanent way, into Bitcoin's record keeping, which, as we know, is very, you know, expensive relative to an aggregate chain like Factom, where it's 32 10,000ths of a penny, thousands of a penny to read or write, right? And you know, Bitcoin, who knows how expensive it will be to write, but it hasn't been that cheap in a long time. So, you know, basically it's about, like, it's kind of like, I think of Bitcoin like a wild horse. It's like the strong horse, but like no one can ride it because it's so strong and so fast and like so erratic that it's impossible. So you need to have like all this other equipment to kind of layer onto the horse, and you know, the chassis and like the stirrups and all these things, saddle and the reins and all of these layers. And then eventually you get enough layers where it's, the horse is just like steady enough where you can put the rider on, or you can put it onto a wagon, or you can put, right, like something over the horse, right, so it can tow something for you, right? So, you know, but it needs the layers, right? Without the layers, you could ride it bareback, but you're only going to get so much. You know, it'll be fun, but like you're only going to get so much use out of the horse. Like there's a lot of wasted energy there, right? Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of how I think of Bitcoin and the evolution, where it's really been a hobby software, in the sense that Bitcoin as a protocol, as a software, has yet to be implemented in any public private institutions. Only the software keys have been arguably implemented in places in corporate treasuries, perhaps, or even public treasuries, perhaps. But, you know, that's totally 100% different than actually utilizing the software itself. And that's where I think we're going to be in this next, you know, 3, 5, 10 years. We're going to see a proliferation of what I call commercialization of Bitcoin, and that we're going to see all the goods and services that we love today get way, 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 way better, cheaper, faster, and we're not even going to know what happened. It'll be kind of like us start using the internet more, us start using smartphones more. Like no one forced us to do it. It was just so much better, cheaper, faster. We just immediately adopted them really fast. I see the same, but even faster adoption happening with Bitcoin and public protocol services. I see them just replacing, and just under the hood, so much of this it's all digital anyway. So from the end user experience, nothing changes except the quality just gets better likely. And the cost gets way cheaper, maybe even free. I see us entering the era of access now, totally exiting the era of ownership. You know, it's like something that, like the late,
That's interesting.
Tony Casterly
Yeah,
talked
because
about a lot.
ownership has been the key. And
Yeah,
so how does this new era work?
I think it works based on care and maintenance, and that ultimately we'll be able to have anything that we want, and we'll be able to have like any experience that we want. Like the responsibility, I think, is going to be much more like, how much time do we want to give of ourselves, basically, in exchange for the experiences that we want. In that the tools around us are going to make it so easy to pivot to whatever kind of learning experience that, or non-learning experience, enjoyment experience, whatever it is that we want. It'll just be a matter of like the consequences, I think, that come with it, might be like, well, maybe I want to run like a Formula One racetrack, and like maybe I can even get all the cars for practically free, but like maybe I have to like figure out how to maintain the building and figure out how to maintain the cars, and like, I've like got to keep servers up or something. I don't really know. I mean, I'm kind of guessing, honestly. I think it's going to be so far beyond our imagination. I think it's going to be kind of like Airbnb and Uber, but just but like combined with like Apple and AT&T, like all these services are going to just get distributed. It's going to be so easy for us to pick up the devices, or all just going to pick up these services, because the devices are no longer going to be hard tethered to the carrier or to the operating system, because they have to be right now, because all software today is central database secure. It all has to come from the Apple cloud, it has to come from the Zoom cloud or the Google cloud, or like, served from the AT&T cloud, from which, and all these central servers everywhere. So it really puts restrictions on the hardware. Like my Apple phone right now can't just search around Bartlesville right now looking for other connections to connect faster. Like it has to look for, the carrier's signal, or like whoever the carrier is then roaming with signal. Like that's it. That's the only options, right? It's so that will all change with public protocol taking over all commercial software, because the key difference is that with public protocol software that, all the distributed public protocol software that ultimately Bitcoin, I would argue, invented, the network protects the security just like any protocol. So as long as you have network stability, you have software security stability. Whereas with like a centralized cloud, you have to secure that cloud. That's why like Microsoft and Google and Apple have these fortress, and Amazon have these fortress of servers, because you need brute force hardware to help brute force your software security, because it's never 100% secure. It's like building the ultimate castle, but you could always have someone just sneak in as a messenger and poison the king or queen, right? Even if you have all the moats and walls and layers and armies and stuff in front of you in your castle, right? That's centralized software. That's what we just saw, Carnival Cruise just admitted yesterday to getting hacked. I mean, every day it's some Fortune 500, some, world government, some US state or some municipality that's admitting to getting hacked. And probably for every one that admits, there's probably at least 20 or more that don't admit it or don't even know yet, right? It's ransomware has increased to a clip of like $400 billion roughly a year in what companies are spending in cybersecurity costs. I mean, the only thing that I've ever found that's had a faster trajectory than Bitcoin's software security key market cap of whatever it is now, about 300 billion, is actually ransomware, where people are usually asking for Satoshis or some other distributed software keys as ransom bounty. And what's interesting is that the ransomware, in a way, I think is driving commercialization of Bitcoin in a funny way. It's like a life is a paradox.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, ransomware basically was a zero cost phenomena even like 8 years ago, because all of the bad hackers were just sitting there spoofing, stealing traffic and selling traffic to advertisers primarily. Now it's gotten so cheap because everything has been stolen so many times. And now that the rise of all these tokens, quote unquote, distributed software keys have become so much more valuable, and there's so many more exchanges, right? ATMs, right? We know the story, right? So they're so much more prolific. It's easier to cash out, quote unquote.
Yep.
right?
Yes. What
So
do you
it's
have in
interesting.
your hand? What is that bowl?
Oh yeah, no, I picked this up. So we were guests of a business associate at the Broadmoor Hotel, and I went to this really cool. Actually, I'll give them a little plug. Called Gibson's, and they have all these really cool gems. And actually, this isn't a gem, of course. It's metal, but it's like a copper ball that I think was
That's so
sourced
cool.
from Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've kind of until I've already kind of like smeared some of the veneer off of there, but I
Yeah.
think it's meant to be played with. So
Yeah.
it's okay. Put it back in the tumbler, right? So it should
Yeah.
be okay. But they're really good. They actually have very good pricing and super
Okay.
service. It's a family.
Yeah.
So yeah. If you want to check out those guys. Actually, I got some other cool stuff. Let's see. This is cool. I picked up this like pyrite. So
Oh my goodness.
supposedly
I
from
love it.
Peru, right? So that's kind of
Yeah.
cool. And then I got this piece of pyrite that supposedly only comes from Spain, or they've only found it there.
Oh
So
wow.
it's like a natural
beautiful.
cube, yeah. And I think this stuff is really reasonable. Like, you know, you don't have to, you know, it's like under $100 for like these pieces each. So yeah, all kinds of cool stuff. It's like, this is kind of cool. It's like an old snail shell fossilized. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of fun. I'm finding a curiosity in all these kinds of fun relics. So I don't know. Bring it back. Keep it simple.
What are you working on now? What is your latest kind of a drive? I know that you've been working on, I mean, if I say people talk about stablecoin and gold peg, you know, cryptocurrency and how they came up with it and they have such a great idea. I'm like, I'm pretty sure Anthem has been working on it for a while. Like that, if I think gold and, you know, cryptocurrency peg, it's you, okay? And just saying. So what are you developing that? What are you working on now?
Well, Humboldt, the association, I mean, Digix really, you know, they started, but, you know, it took them a while to launch. We did launch the first gold token technically 6 years ago, Independence Coin, where we forked what today is called Dash. Then it was called Dark Coin. Like Reuters covered that. I mean, really, that kind of stoked our curiosity into using Bitcoin and public protocols more specifically as like a carrier vehicle for like metals and things like that. Now, stable coins, we call them. We stumbled upon a few years ago inventory software because we wanted to build the best stable coin or gold token possible. And we created the software stack that I mentioned called Hercules. And Hercules anchors into Bitcoin. It processes off of Ethereum, and it stores in distributed software stacks, IPFS and STORJ, and it indexes as well. It's its own protocol. And we realized that we could sell this software as supply chain track trace software that was incorruptible. And then we also realized about a year ago that the software was 100% ransomware proof because it's 100% distributed software. We never lean on any centralized database architectured software. And because of that architecture being 100% distributed with Hercules, we can sell it and package it in other applications, plug into the API, all various kinds of assorted type of arrangements. And Hera Software Development is the company that we created to deploy Hercules. So Hera is kind of like our Red Hat to like Hercules, which is kind of like our Linux LAMP stack, basically. And so Hera has really been our focus. And we actually have just about launched our first enterprise build. It is another gold token. It's effectively like a private label of our Texas-based Anthem gold token, except this one's in the Netherlands and it's associated with a European government. I don't want to say what it is yet because we can maybe revisit that. That'd be kind of a fun revisit maybe in a few weeks. Hopefully, it's up to them when they launch. So I'm really proud of that one because it's our first enterprise build. So, you know, we've basically been spending 7 years in public protocol builds, and finally to get to build one for someone else this year has been a real honor. So now we're fielding a lot of other clients, a lot of traditional governments, traditional corporations that we're talking with that the ransomware has become all of a sudden pain point for them. Yeah. And we have this distributed architecture that, as opposed to like a traditional traffic filtering, which is traditionally what cybersecurity companies do, which is kind of like drinking from a fire hose and having to spit it all out again. It's super expensive. It takes a lot of work. Whereas with distributed software, of course, we eliminate any application, any central database, right? There is no central database for Bitcoin or Ethereum or Hercules or any of these public protocols. And all the data is held in databases just on the edge ultimately. And so that creates for a really great environment. It's a safe environment, and it makes for an efficient environment as well, because all of the traffic doesn't have to be coming from this fire hose. So I'd like to say we were some genius masterminds, really. We kind of just stayed curious. We just, we wanted to protect people's value. And what it turned out to be, it turned from physical material value in like gold and silver and crypto format to help people, to then helping protect people's goods and services, I think is what happened with Hera and Hercules, that we can protect people from getting distributed denial of service. We can protect people from getting their entire application and databases getting ransomed. We can create a secure environment that ends up being way more data efficient, bandwidth efficient, cost efficient in terms of saving data, serving data, so input output efficient, and relative to central database approach.
Yeah, protecting value for people. I as you said that, I see that it just kind of, I can see that it's been something that's been ingrained in you, and I think it's probably something genetic, right? Because I know your dad was working on that as well. And is it just something that you've been wanting to do since you were a little boy? Because I know you guys have history.
I'm grateful and I'm humbled. I think it's osmosis. I'm adopted. I was adopted at 2 years old, basically. Okay. 2 days old, not years, but I am my father's son. I'm my mother's son. So I don't know my biological parents. So to me, I think I'm a testament to, you are your environment, right? Like, yeah, I'm sure that I have some things genetically in myself that probably allow me to process in certain ways, maybe, but I really see a lot of myself, most of myself in my family, but yet biologically, I'm in no way related to them. My dad was in a wheelchair, and people in wheelchairs, it was illegal for them to adopt children in the state of Louisiana, and it still might be that way. It's kind of part of the foster care forced marketplace child slavery racket that basically gets run. They had to purchase me through a mafioso boss in Chicago that ran an adoption agency through the Salvation Army Hospital, like a procurement agency. So, I mean, I could have been like an Epstein kid, who knows? So my parents saved me, right? And so value brought me freedom. I got adopted into like the greatest family ever, arguably, right? Like my dad's, interviewing like Hayek, and they're like predicting Bitcoin, right? Supposedly, right? And all these like famous interview that he did. And so, I'm just a testament that wealth buys freedom. And so if everyone can have wealth, then everyone can be free. And I think that's what Bitcoin can offer. Gold was the best of a horrible system of violence, but now we can do so much better. And I think gold and metals will be in a really critical transition to keep the peace, because the old system does have so much retained earnings, quote unquote, in metals, ultimately, relatively speaking. So I think that, our transition to software keys, especially software keys that just, represent utility, like, Satoshis and ETH and things like that, are going to become predominant forms of currency because they're barter. And I think we're entering barter, whereas like metal is typically a form of violent currency because someone has to define a standard. And something that has to be defined has to be defended. Something that to be defended can be aggressed. Something that can be aggressed is violent. So money is really a third-party conduit value that has to be defined, whereas Satoshis and software keys to public protocols give you direct access to that value. So like the Anthem Gold AGLD stablecoin, quote unquote, is really just a software key that if you have 1,000 of them, you can redeem a kilogram bar out of Montgomery, Texas vault. That's like on the website on video, and Lloyd's have insured. Yeah. So like, right. So like, or like vice versa, if it's like, a certain number of Satoshis that we bid, right, about every 15 minutes now or so, like it gives us a record into like the strongest record on the world, right? And that's it, right? So it gives us direct access. Of course, we can speculate. We can even like use them as a form of like money if we wanted to, but ultimately, I think we're moving away from this kind of a system of money. I think money is behind us because money is violent, and I think violence is behind us.
Yeah.
Like we'll still have nature, to deal with and contend with, but I think violence between each other as people and humans is going to be, we're like fading that away. It's just a matter of time until Bitcoin commercializes fully. Maybe 1 year, maybe 10 years. I have no idea.
And there's other technologies that are evolving as well that will allow us to do that too. I think we are getting to a point to where we really going to experience integration of many innovations, right? Not just one, but many innovations. And it seems that as they're raising, they can be used for good or bad. And I trust that the world will make them for good, because I have been traveling the world, because I've been meeting people like yourself, and there is nothing that's going to convince you to use it for bad. And there are many people like us who are working, who co-creating, whether it's directly or indirectly contributing to a better cause for a future that's better for us, for near future, which is, I think, very important too. People think about future, always future, it's far away. I think the moment is now, Anthem. We are living this emergence of integration, of innovation, the things that we've been doing for just in Bitcoin industry. In 10, 11 years, so much happened, right? Especially since 2013, we've seen such a great emergence of all kinds of systems coming up from it, right? Because when people think about growth cycle, they think price of Bitcoin, they think about price of something else. How do you get money? I look at it and I say, I see all these innovations emerging and ideas are becoming reality, and we are leaving this. This is the turning point. And I think every day, day by day, I know you're working. You could be just, you have your circumstances of life, I believe, you can be considered as a privileged person. You could just go and live your fancy life, travel the world, do whatever, and really integrate further into traditional systems and go do all the things that you discussed. But that's not your soul, that's not your spirit, that's not the mission of your life. And there's so many of us that are doing that, and it's very big network.
I know you are too, and I know you and your family are in the same position, and I'm grateful and humbled that you all have made the same choice. So thank you.
Yes.
Grateful.
And so many of us, right? I love going and meeting new people all over the world, and you just see what they're doing. And I think that if we build, that's, I think the only thing that's keeping us really back is this outdated systems of money. And I know that we're in an approach of big transition, right? So these are very, very exciting times. I want to ask you a question. Where do you see us in 25 years? People ask like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I want 25. Quarter century passes by. Where are we? Draw us a picture.
I think we're space tourism. I think we all have cars that can hover over the road at the very least. I think, we're going to have air travel that's probably, at least 5 times, if not 10 times faster than it is now. I think that, stresses of things like our medical and health are going to be drastically different. I think we're probably going to live at least twice as long, if not longer. Like, I think I actually are very radical. I think that we're going to see economic reason to have resurrection of people, because my theory is that we as individuals are the quantum computers that we've been looking for, in that we're going to be incentivized by unique DNA to pull up unique quantum computers. So I actually think that quote unquote prophecy of the Bible and things actually, it actually is kind of interesting, because if you look at it, you can make an argument that says, well, if we have this incredible processing power and now we have this alignment together because of trusted record keeping, maybe now we've changed our incentive from killing each other to increase our quality of life to helping each other to increase our quality of life. And I think that's going to be, it's going to make everything so radically different that it will make today seem like how we talk about 10,000 years ago. Like, I really think that's how we're going to look at today 25 years from now. I think it'll be like how we look at like the Stone Ages, or like, yeah, like people living in caves, like getting chased around by animals and stuff, you know, or whatever, right? Like, you know, lighting and torches or whatever we were doing. Or maybe we were doing not that. Maybe we were like a lot more sophisticated and we killed each other then, right? Who knows?
Justin and I always
no one really knows.
Because we say we're gonna be like the oldest looking generation, right? Because probably life expansion and preservation may be a little bit easier than age reversal, right? And you know, he has PhD in chemistry and bio, so we nerd out on that stuff. And so I agree with you. It's very interesting. You know, when I think about where we're going to be in 25 years.
Yeah, where do you think?
That too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, alignment. Maybe we have alignment. Maybe that's a good sign.
I think it's the vibration. I really believe that, you know, similar vibrations, they are kind of attract, and then that forms the layer of the reality for those that similarly see it. And to me, that's the explanation why so many people leave different lives. And you know, because you really kind of end up, your reality changes based on the vibration that you experience and communicate. I think you were talking about life preservation and life expansion, that we are going to be living, you know, probably double that time, and how resurrection and making sure that people live longer, that it's sustainable. Interestingly, you know, there are two thoughts that come to my mind. On one hand, we always hear like we're overpopulated, it's a problem, you know, there's all this. But in reality, when we look at the data and when we look at the country by country analysis, there's a big problem. People are stopping to reproduce. And most importantly, in countries like India, the prediction is that population is going to decline. So next 10 years, we're going to see huge decline in population all over the world, right? Of course, we know that Europe is experiencing it right now. And I really think that the longer we live, the longer we're gonna take, you know, to have babies. Because look, if I'm living 250 years, okay, I'll have a kid, my kid grows up, when my kid is like 40, and we, you know, because there's cycles, right? You get a kid, you love them, you love your family unit, you forever stay family unit, but you kind of go and you stop your famous partying and hanging out and being all with friends and outing and abouting, right? You go into your home unit and you cozy up in there, and as you're going into social life, it's much more concentrated. And then they grow up, and then you get your independence back, and though your heart always lives with them, you get that, you know, it's a party time and be famous time again, right? And if you do it on a term of 200 years, now family units say, okay, I'm gonna have a baby, and then we'll just like, so we are not, that the kids have a chance to know each other better, because like all the definitions of what it is like to be a family, to reproduce, I think is going to change, because now you kind of can plan and say, okay, you know, this time I'll get pregnant, I'll have one baby, but I want to have, you know, twins. So in 40 years, I'll have twins. but for the rare population. And then I think also some people are just going to opt out to not stay alive that long, because not everybody wants to be alive for a long time. To some people, they look at age and they think it's suffering. And my thesis is that we're going to see people opting out because they're scared of suffering, and there's going to be this educational period when some are going to need to lead and communicate that age is not suffering, that it is a continuation, it's a wisdom, that abundance is there for everybody and value for everybody, and be those that bring the wisdom and knowledge, not just knowledge from permanent record, but like you said, that knowledge, the wisdom, the computer that we are, that those unique connections that we have from the experiences that we had and so forward. So we have similar vision. I see that, and that's wonderful. I know that you moved from LA, right?
Basically, I mean, we had always kind of had a vacation place there, and we, were Texans, but we basically just decided we were gonna just say goodbye for now, just with everything going on in California. We just felt like really egregious natural rights violations, and we kind of could see it on the wall in March. The government started blocking sidewalks, and there's a famous Supreme Court case that's about right to freedom of assembly, which is technically the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And basically a private organization blocked sidewalks. So once we saw the government started to block sidewalks, we're like, this is over. And kind of had a business trip that basically we were just leaving anyway around that time and just never looked back. And yeah, we're really happy. I'm in Bartlesville, Oklahoma right now. We've had offices here for years. We have family here. So I love this part of the world. And so does obviously my wife. She grew up here. And so I'm just happy to be here. It's just a real dose of common sense. So it's a lot of people that, enjoy being around each other, a lot of family, a lot of friends, people that have farm life. So they're used to like real issues like sickness. I know that you and Justin family have farm as well. So it's just, it's refreshing. It's a lot of common sense and really a lack of kind of hysteria and just people, blindly listening to, who they think they should be listening to. So it's nice.
Feeding into their own confirmation biases through the internet. It's interesting. I had an interview with Jeremy Gardner. You know Jeremy well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So he said something interesting that I kind of didn't just think about it. It made perfect sense. He said, I think that we should be really careful with allowing our children to go on the internet, because it's such an abundance of over information, to where if you get into some kind of an idea, it ends up feeding you confirmation bias, and it's unlimited. I mean, literally you can, and it's very hard to distinguish between what the truth is and what is not. And I think that was very interesting, because that's kind of what I think that is kind of happening right now. Being in Texas, we are so grateful because we're very happy in Texas. People are doing well. And it really is kind of it's a freedom thing that it looks now. The bars are closed and stuff, and that's, there's a harm that's being caused by government for restricting people's freedom, and there are restrictions on gatherings. Of course, there's no concerts and all of that, but there's new adoption to it. There are places to where, with the social distancing, there's still artists singing songs, there's people doing stuff in the restaurants, people are dancing because they're just standing, the music plays, they stand up by their whatever chair and they dance a little bit. And also I think that people are getting closer to earth. They're going and camping, they're going hiking, they're going and farming, learning, starting gardens at home, and kind of being closer. But there is a sense of freedom. I do see that, there's not a judgment if somebody is wearing or not wearing a mask. There's not that like hateful, you're a horrible person comment or look. It's just everybody has their own understanding and their own life circumstances, and they are respectful to each other, but the respect is not communicated. It's not like you're not wearing a mask, you're disrespectful, you're you're a bad person, you want everybody to die, right? It's just everyone understands that circumstances for everyone is different and they have their own level of comfort. And most importantly, they less people in Texas, for example, I think, follow the news. More of they spend their time working and then really interacting in whatever comfort way they have, right? There's such a thing that's called a bubble here. So people discuss that. A friend's birthday was just a couple days ago, and he mentioned that somebody asked him, what are your bubble like what are your bubble restrictions? And that what we've learned, and he said, like, we don't have bubbles restrictions. Kids love bubbles, adults love bubbles. He's thinking champagne, yes, kids, yes, because we're parents, right? And what that was is that basically groups of people are saying, you know what, I feel comfortable with doing this. So they finding other people in their network that are comfortable with certain level of restrictions, and then they are still being what they think is conscious, and to them it is, and probably to others too. And then that's how they interact. But that social unit is not dead, and it's not and people are not judged for it. And is that similar in Oklahoma as well?
I think probably to another level, but very much so. People don't judge people here really at all. I mean, we're in Bartlesville, which is north of Tulsa. There are some like city council restrictions. I don't really agree with any of them, but they are here. I respect everyone's right to wear a mask or to do whatever they want to themselves. It's their body, it's their choice. I do also know some of the intricacies of the law. There really is a federal preemption, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to call it, called the Uniform Commercial Code. And I'm surprised it's taken this long for it to get challenged, given how desperate everyone is economically. But I am starting to see some lawsuits already in Tulsa, which is good. And I think we're going to start seeing.
Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, so basically in the United States, all commerce is basically governed by a legal code that it goes by the acronym called UCC, and it's called Uniform Commercial Code. And basically, like, these are things like discrimination laws. Like, some people might have heard of things like Title VII, or like women, you can't discriminate against someone if how they look, or you have to have, wheelchair spaces in the parking lot, right? Like we see like the handicap, right? Accessible. These are all Title VII, or like having a service animal. If you ever like had a service animal on a plane, you're dealing with UCC. Interstate commerce, so trucking, anytime you go over state lines. Basically what's happened over decades and decades is that the US Supreme Court has ruled that pretty much all commerce is UCC governed, because they basically say, even if it's technically in the state, there could be one little thing that either party does outside of the state, like their phone bill, right? AT&T isn't in my state, so that means it's interstate commerce, right? So the interesting thing is that people have really been voluntarily doing all of these things. In addition, to me, what it really represents is how afraid everybody is.
Yeah.
In that they're so, about 40% of the GDP comes from the government in the United States. That literally means about 4 in 10 people, roughly, literally are relying on listening to someone else for their existence. So, then you figure at least another probably 3 out of 10 effectively are vassals of the state, I would call it, or, basically executives of big companies that service, a lot of government contracts is like at least a material part of their business, which is pretty much most of the Fortune 100 in the United States and globally. So I would say probably 9 in 10 people are really used to taking orders from other people and like how they live their lives. And so when that mechanism is now been really confused, because there's like all these different things, opinions of what's going on, and people are seeing all this personal and information that they're absorbing. Like, they're not seeing everybody drop dead of COVID, right? There's like all these weird things, right? And so it's making everyone like scared, because like we need a foundation, we need markets, we need marketplaces, we need like constructs. And so I think that's what we're observing. It's such a, we're so far removed from basic like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Like the numbers are so far off. Again, like when I started seeing back, I think it was probably as early as around April-ish, some of these comorbidity numbers on COVID being like 6-7 times order of magnitude, simply if it was like a Republican or Democratic governor. It was like absurdities where you would expect like 10% variance to be a big deal, and you see 650 or 700% variance on something that was only supposedly around, even if the whole thing I could tell was a hoax and a scam. But it's difficult to process it all. And I do agree, you have to be comfortable with where you're at, touch the heart to reach the mind. Kind of your earlier comment, I'm not a parent, I'm a dog parent, Cynthia and I, but we don't parent children. So, the internet's a tough thing. I mean, it is, I think, what you make of it, but as a child, I don't know. I mean, I feel for you, and thank you and grateful for you for being parents and having the bravery and the strength to do it, and the resilience. I don't have a good answer for that. I could see it both ways from my perspective. Like it's a evil that we have to deal with, kind of like teaching people about money, but at the same time, like, is it really good for a kid to like really kind of corrupt ultimately their creativity by like exposing them kind of to like all this noise basically, and like lack of trusted mechanisms of like, how can you really trust what you're seeing? Because there's a little person behind YouTube or a little person behind Facebook, right? Or Twitter, right? We found out there's 12 admins that basically have master control of Twitter. And there's 12 little people.
Yep.
That's how these companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, have to work, because the software is not trusted. It all gets back to trusted records.
Exactly. And I think that finally we're at the point to where we have such a great track record for the performance of Bitcoin, right? Of trusted record, that the companies and regulators are looking at it and they're saying, oh, actually, especially for regulators, that's my friend, that's a good thing. That makes my job easier, because it's a permanent record, it works. I don't have to have all this stuff to try to verify all this, right? It can be, I can trust that it can be automated, and it's most secure thing. I think about Bitcoin and I think, the biggest payout to a hacker to have, man, whoever hacks Bitcoin can have a really great payout. No, it doesn't happen. And now regulators understand it, right? And I think why that's important is because we also seeing that centralized blockchains do get hacked, okay? And that, I think, is such a very important point of what our future holds, is that it's proven that decentralization allows us to create trust, right? And make sure that the trust takes a new meaning. It doesn't mean that I'm going to catch you stealing. It means that I trust you. It's actually going to be meaningful, because in the high level trust situations, you're not going to need to wonder, right? The things that are high value, the money, for example, right? Or business agreement, there's going to be 100% trust written into it. If it's a contract that involves money transfer, it can be done automatically as it signs, right? Like it is, and literally automatically, not what you people think what is happening, because nothing is automatically right now in a traditional financial system, even though you think it is. Yeah, for sure.
True.
Yeah, and I think that when I think about near future, I see that what we're learning from what's happening in the world right now is that we need some kind of a better way of transferring money, right? Making sure that it's done right, making sure that the data is recorded correctly, making sure that there's no double counting for anything, that people that might have incentives to, for example, have X or Y reported in whatever way, right? Even if they have incentives, they don't have a possibility to do that because we have a infrastructure built in on a tech that verifies that double checks and make sure that it's a permanent record. And if you're a liar, your pants will get on fire, and then you get the consequences, because regulators, nobody wants to allow any of this, right? I think it's a tragedy of what it used to be like, I think, in when people were informed, and people used to be being kind of a living in fear. And I think that what we're witnessing right now with the technology is that we're finally getting to a point to where the information is letting us question it. Because look, we're talking, right? If you were only listening to what newspaper printed to you before, or what you're reading on the internet or whatever, it would be much easier to kind of get you thinking in a certain way. But when you and me talk and I tell you, well, this is my experience, and you tell me this is my experience, and then we share the experience of our community, and we now have people from all over the world sharing community, it allows us to be able to stay more focused and more realistic with what experiences are, and thus questioning the effectiveness of traditional system. And I think that we're witnessing right now and living through collapse of traditional systems. And for you viewers to be not scared and let go of fear, know that we have the technology and we have the people that will make this transition transparently less painful than you think. Historically, when we witnessed traditional systems or systems collapse, it caused generations and generations of pain. It's not necessary this way, because we do have new technology that actually can build in on that infrastructure.
Well said. Thank you for your hope. And it's true.
Yeah.
We're here and we're ready. Let's just, like the Jeremys of the world, and the Vitaliks, and the Brocks, and the Hughes, and the Justins, and the Arenas, and the Anthems, and the Logans, and
right.
Our whole team, the Joshes and Cynthias and Pauls and Renees, and just grateful that we have such an awesome group of leaders that was curious enough to work with all of this as a hobby, as public protocol as a hobby, and now all of us hobbyists get to really see to the commercialization. So it's really cool. It's quite an honor. It's very humbling. So thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you so much. And I hope that you come and visit in Texas.
Likewise. Well, we're just up the road, 75, US 75 in Bartlesville. So we're ready.
Well, I think we're going to go and visit this cow association something, Justin.
Awesome.
There's some kind of special cow that is breed of 4 cows. That's the best cow. And nice. So we're going to go to their event, I think, in September. And I think we'll be passing through where you guys are. So we'll definitely stop and see you.
Come visit. All right. Yeah. We'd love that. So much love to you all. Say hi to Justin for me, and to your family. And thank you. Thanks, Arena. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Anthem. Say hello to Cynthia as well, and to all your loved ones. And thank you, viewers, for taking time. And I hope that you felt that you were part of a conversation, because you were in both of our hearts. And we value you, and we want to hear from you. If you're working on something that is related to creation of new systems, and you want to connect with Anthem, connect with him. He's so open and transparent. He's always available and always there for conversation. And I've always seen that he is assist to others. He's open to new ideas. And so don't shy away, okay? Don't shy away.
I'm here. Yeah, 702-569-3431. Twitter, Facebook I have open. Instagram, Anthem Hayek is my handle on Instagram and Twitter. So I try to make it as simple as I can possibly do WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram I try to avoid just because I have a trouble managing it as well, but I am there too. You can also find our main groups for Hercules and Anthem Gold there. But yeah, reach out. I'm here. Thank you. Appreciate it. It's a humble honor again. So thank you for having me, and this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Hope you did too.